In this video, I'll demonstrate using an historic gas-fired Marshall blocking press to block a frame and letters using metallic foil. Most old gas-fired blocking presses have been modernised to electric, or they're missing the burner or other important parts. I was very excited to obtain this Marshall press from Doug Keats in working order when he closed his business, Ambassador Binding. Doug hadn't used it a lot recently and it was very rusty, so I did do a light restoration and I have made a video about this. I keep the press in my finishing area, but it's on wheels so I can move it to a better ventilated spot for use. The first thing I want to point out is that the job I'm working on is long and narrow. I don't want to shove the case all the way through the press and have it hanging out the back. I'd rather it hang out the front where I have more control over it. With my single pillar Marshall, I would have it go out to the left away from the handle, which would make keeping it square easier. But the problem with the single pillar machine is that the chase is smaller and this design wouldn't fit in it. I normally set up in the finishing area, but for ease of video, I'll set up in my usual filming bench. On my finishing bench, I have a box with metal printer's spacing material called furniture, and in a wall cupboard I keep the brass type. This design is inspired by a notepad holder from 1970 that's a simple frame and corporate initials inside an outline of Australia. I keep the frame and just use my initials DAS instead of the Australia. I'm using 24 point Kent, which is my largest brass type. I prefer brass type as it withstands blocking pressure better and you're less likely to melt it by accident. Once I set up the DAS with N quad spaces, I add further spacing the width I want for the frame. I try and make this very slightly larger than a standard length piece of furniture. Cornerstone is the most common metal letterpress furniture in Australia, but my collection is a mix of different brands that I've collected over many years. Once I have the text and spacing either side, I can measure the width so I can cut printer's rule to the same length. The original design has a 12-point wide frame and I'm lucky enough to have a small stock of 12-point rule. I cut it on my universal rule and lead cutter. It has a great little feature of a micro adjustment, and I did cut some leading to get the length just right before cutting the rule. I have a limited supply of new leading and rule. For the test piece, I used a ratty old piece of already cut leading, which can then go back into the rack just a bit shorter. I'm not an expert at cutting rule, but my experience is that the cutting blade squashes the rule slightly at the start of the cut. The rule I used has a smooth, clear printing face and what I think would be called a rougher foot. The letterpress printers are having a fit at this point. But to avoid the squashing of the face, I place the rule so the face is towards the back. There is less distortion this way. Now I have the horizontal lines, I can space out the vertical. I want the box to be as large as possible, and I look for furniture that will allow this with the use of a narrow margin coin. A coin is an expanding wedge that locks the form in place in the chase. Once I have the horizontal rule positioned, I know how long to cut the vertical pieces of rule. I did forget a minor detail, but luckily I remember before it's too late. I meant to show changing the position of the stop on the rule cutter, but I forgot to press record. It's simple enough. There is a thumb screw at the back that is loosened, and by pressing the button on top, the stop can be slid along the guide, and there's a pica scale etched on the guide. With the frame complete, I can space out either side, trying to keep the form centered. I can use the standard width coin for the side. I use a wooden block, which is an old piece of wood furniture, as a plane and tap everything down. I was about to lock up when I remembered that I should put a strip of blotting paper each side of the brass rule. When using metal furniture, the slightest mismatch in width can result in loose type that falls out when inverted. A couple of pieces of thin paper allow enough compression to fill these small discrepancies and keep everything tight and secure. And I shouldn't do the final lockup until I'm ready to block. I operate the press near the back doors, which provides excellent ventilation. I steal the LPG bottle off my barbecue. The press burners have a regulator which provides gas at a pressure that is matched to the burner in a way that the flame is sized just right for this press. I imagine the initial setup of these parameters would take a lot of experimentation. Luckily, mine came working. If you ever need to set up burners on a similar press, get in touch and I can provide details of my setup as best I can. All the 2-pillar Marshall presses have a large screw at the back to lock the heated upper section in place once the height is adjusted. For the electric versions, this is only used for height adjustment. But to remove and install the gas burners, this is also used to loosen the top section and rotate the firebox, allowing the burners to go in and out. Once I've put the burners back in, I do this screw up most of the way, but leave it loose enough to make the final height adjustment later. Now I can lock up firmly, but not overly tight. I don't want to break anything, especially my chase. The first time I rotate the chase, I'm careful to keep my hand underneath, just in case something falls out. Once I've installed the chase and the press, I remember I should tape the piece of board on the base plate in place. Doug told me to use a piece of red press board, but this is no longer available. So I'm using a dense binders board, which seems to work well. In the past, I've just used the bare metal and it's worked, but the board provides some give and maybe makes the process a bit more forgiving, and you don't get any grease off the metal on your work. Turning the press on is as simple as turning the gas taps on and lighting the flame. No more power outages stopping me from bookbinding. I use an infrared thermometer to keep an eye on the temperature. Initially, the gas burners made me nervous and I was worried about overheating, but this press has been well set up. It takes about 30 minutes to reach an operating temperature with the chase installed. By that time, it's close to an equilibrium temperature. The massive weight of iron and steel pull a lot of heat out of the heating area of the press. While it gets warm to hot, the neck above the firebox never gets so hot that you can't hold your hand on it. I still monitor the temperature constantly. Now I can set the pressure applied when blocking. I'm going to block the job with its board in place. So using a piece of board the identical thickness, I place this under the tracing paper and use the big wheel on the top to adjust the height so there's a light impression when the lever is fully engaged. The thickness of the tracing paper is very close to the covering material. If it wasn't, I'd use a piece of the covering material to make this adjustment. Once I'm happy with the height, I can do up the big screw at the back and lock it with the locking thumb screw. The foil I'm using is old foil I've inherited from bookbinders that have closed shop. This is not the ideal way to procure foil. It's not expensive and I should just buy new foil. I do have some new foil from Kurtz, but it isn't wide enough for this job. Foils are made for a wide range of properties for different jobs. Kurtz do have some general purpose foils that work on most materials used for small bookbinding. But with trial and error, you can find second-hand foils that work. If you find a foil that doesn't work, don't blame yourself. It was probably meant for a different material and has unusual working properties. You should throw these away or let them accumulate, taking up space in a cupboard. I did jump the gun with my first impression and it didn't work because the temperature was too low. While I was waiting, I did try another foil, but it was so old that it had started to tarnish and decay. I did throw this roll away, even though it had a lower activation temperature, which would have been really handy. Finally, I was confident enough in the temperature to do a test with the actual covering material. My standard process is to do this test on a loose piece until I get a good result. Luckily, I got a good result my first try. This plastic-coated, paper-based covering material is very receptive to foil. Then I do my final test, which is on one of the prototypes of the job. Normally, my final test is on a piece that is identical to the job, but for reasons that will be clear in the video on the actual project, the final test was done on a piece with the turn-ins done. The actual job was blocked with the turn-ins not complete, but with pieces of yellow tape indicating the edges of the job. It's a long story that I'll explain in the next video. The idea of the final test is to do it exactly like the job. Those yellow pieces of tape ended up being a pain in the neck. Without them, I couldn't see where the edges of the board were, but they overhung the job and kept sticking to the base plate. At first, I thought this was an advantage, but I found it made fine adjustment difficult. In the end, one ended up slightly crooked. It's hard to notice, so I'm not going to sweat it, but it shows why one puts processes in place and why you should follow them. This press was made before foil existed. The original binders would have been using real loose gold leaf. The first foils used real gold, but some effort would have been made to optimize its use. While real gold foil is still available, this metallic foil has nothing to do with gold. But the press still works very well with modern foils. The more modern Marshall presses look identical to the older ones, except foil feeders could be added as an option. Once I'm done, I turn the gas off and let everything cool down, which takes hours, and then I put everything away and return the gas bottle to the barbecue. I had wanted to make the video about the actual job before the blocking video, but that video has turned out almost 40 minutes long, which is too long and I don't want to split it. So I'm going to have to do some serious editing, which I'm not happy about, but that's the life of YouTube. If I can keep some momentum going, the final video about the actual job will be ready for next week. I hope you found this video interesting. Until next time, cheerio.